It's Destruction in Kobe Day, and we had a very entertaining show today to talk about. One that had a lot of interesting matches and also some developments for the future as we move toward Wrestle Kingdom season, King of Pro Wrestling, and everything else. So multiple title matches, a couple of angles, and a return from excursion. It was all that we wanted out of this, and I had a good time with it. We're going to break it down for you. Destruction in Kobe review right here with Jeremy Finestone. I'm Steven Conway. This is Speaking of Strong Style. Welcome, everyone, to Speaking of Strong Style, where we discuss the news, issues, and events surrounding New Japan Pro Wrestling. And we had an event today, so we're doing a special show to talk about it now. So we're contributors to the Fight Game Media, Jeremy and I are, and we're talking Destruction in Kobe. Overall, Jeremy, I thought this was a very entertaining night of wrestling. I thought it set up a lot of interesting things for King of Pro Wrestling coming up just next month, and maybe a little bit more. I thought it was fun. I had a good time today. What did you think? We were building to this for a long time. We had a lull before it. We didn't have any shows on New Japan World. They were still doing the Hokkaido tour last week. So we had a lot of time to sit and stew and analyze this just because we didn't have a ton of events to watch. So once it was over with, what were your opinions of Destruction in Kobe today?
I think that New Japan feels like it's on the right track. All the matches were very good to great. There were things that you'd look at of like, why is this match even happening? And when the card was over, I felt like everything made sense. I felt like the directions they were going to excited me. And on the whole, I thought the card was just great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, they drew well because they loaded it. I mean, that was the one thing they had over 4,000. And they had over 4,000 for this one. The last time they had a show that drew that well in Kobe World Hall, it's been several years. I mean, today was Destruction of Kobe, and I'm looking at the last time they drew that well. It's been Destruction 2019 in Kobe did 6,000. Today the attendance was about 4,500, and between then and now, really. Dragon's Gate Kobe Pro Wrestling Festival, which, Dragon's Gate Kobe is basically their home arena, drew 5,100 in 2023. But this was a big crowd. And for the most part, they reacted to what they saw. I thought it was a very vociferous crowd as well. And it added to the atmosphere. So good vibes all around. I mean, they loaded up the show. Mm-hmm. It drew a good number. It entertained. This is exactly what we were hoping for going into Wrestle Kingdom season. And I do think it helped that Zack Sabre Jr. said he was going to challenge after winning the G1 championship. He was going to challenge at King of Pro Wrestling, which left everything open. So to this day, we still don't have a Wrestle Kingdom match or a Wrestle Dynasty match or anything. So you kind of have to watch this stuff to figure out what's going to happen in the future. And we got a couple of indications by the end of this one. I think we have a path, and it's a very LIJ centric one, but it's something that could really work in New Japan's favor. So solid work.
It felt like we were gear shifting up toward Wrestle Kingdom in a lot of ways. Like the pathways are becoming clear. You're speeding it up. Everything is just kind of like, all right, we're moving into gear. This is what's happening. I went through and I was thinking about LIJ and Hontai and House of Torture and Bullet Club, and you feel like the directions are there for the top guys. You feel like everybody has some type of pathway. You know, they are clearly prioritizing a few guys over the other based off of the results tonight. But at the same time, there were no real surprises in the show tonight. You know what I mean? Like there were a lot of like things made sense. And we talked in our preview some of the ways that some of these matches could go. And, we argued 2 and 4 for a lot of these things. And, a lot of it came true. The probabilities of what we were going to end up seeing. And to that, I mean no surprises. And no surprises is not a bad thing. if something nonsensical happens and all of a sudden we veer sideways on the road to Wrestle Kingdom, that's not exciting to people. It's just a conversation about noise. We're going in a traditional direction with excitement, with intrigue. Nothing is clear, but at the same time, when the past Wrestle Kingdom is over for some of these top guys, you're going to be smacking your head and be going like, I should have seen it all along.
Yeah, it's interesting too. I was looking back at the last time they drew this many in Kobe World Hall, and I have it up here on my screen. So that would have been in September of 2019, which when the company was red hot in 2019. It's really the pandemic really halted New Japan's momentum because they were doing very, very well going into that. Last time they were here with this many people, 6,100 at Kobe World Hall. Jay White defeated Naito in the main event in an Intercontinental title match. Hirooki Goto beat Shingo Takagi in the special match as the semifinal. And then there was a Young Lion Cup that included Carl Fredericks over Shota Umino and Clark Connors beating Ren Narita, just to show you where we...
What, 2019, 2018?
2019. And the opening match was Yuji Nagata, Yota Tsuji, Young Lion Yota Tsuji, and Young Lion Yuya Uemura beating Nakanishi, Alex Coughlin, and a guy that I frankly had forgotten about, and I don't mean any offense, but I forgot about Michael Richards being in New Japan. Michael Richards is with Alex Coughlin and things. So that
credit I will give this show is that it pulled deep from lore in order to get some of the points across. And I had a lot of appreciation for that. We talked about YOSHI-HASHI and the path that he had gone from, to get to this point where he was considered a legitimate contender. And by God, that was exactly the story that New Japan told.
Very much so. Very much so.
Becoming a legitimate contender.
I'm going to take a pause here to say hello to some people who are watching here. Colin is with us. Colin, glad to see you right there. Glad you're here. Brad is here. We don't get to see Brad live very often. We're very glad that you're with us live. I know that the time doesn't always work out on Thursday, so we're glad you're here. Dunston's here. He said, I'm watching this later, but he has questions. Colin's in the middle of watching it. He's in the middle of Hanare Shingo. So I'm afraid, Colin, we're going to spoil some stuff. Just saying. Just saying.
I hope you get through this in the next match before you come back to us.
Brad says, hey, fellas, didn't watch the show yet. He's been catching up on Stardom for this morning. Yeah, I mean, Tony Storm is back in Stardom now for a little while, and there's a lot of stuff. And Senjo, the Sendai Girls show. As always, a very busy weekend in Japanese wrestling there. So I can't wait to watch it later, but I've heard all the happenings. And Brad, I hope you had a chance to watch the Queen of the Villains. We talked about that on Thursday.
I believe you watched it. And I'm
betting Brad caught that.
That individual, he got me as excited to see the ending. He saw it before I did, and I knew that I was going to like the end before I got. He didn't spoil it or anything, but the enthusiasm that he had for it was exceptional, and it was correct.
I sent Scott Edwards down a rabbit hole. I sent him a link to a YouTube account that has a lot of very late 70s and early 80s Japanese women's wrestling, like Joshi sets, something like this guy put together all these wonderful compilations, about 4 hours long each.
Did you? I have news about that. Actually, you actually started something. I was listening to his podcast. Yes, Scott, I do listen to your podcast. Mm-hmm. And he announced that he is doing a new podcast series based off of all those matches. He's exploring the old Joshi matches, and he's going to be doing, he was inspired to do a new thing. I apologize that I don't remember the name. It's clever. And I was like, good for you, Scott. But Scott Edwards is doing a Joshi review history show based off of these matches as a result of his inspiration for Queen of Villains. So check that out on his Twitter feed.
I'm partially taking credit for that because I directed him to that historical thing. Yeah. No,
I didn't think about mentioning it until you brought it up. And if you hadn't brought it up, like, you would not have inspired a historian like himself and yourself to go down that well.
There's some great stuff back there. So keep an eye out for that. Hopefully that you'll be able to hear that very soon. So shall we talk about the Destruction in Kobe show? We're going to start at the very beginning.
Why we're here.
I think it is too. So we're going to start at the very beginning and work toward the main event. Sometimes we go backwards, but this time we're just going to take it as it comes because the show built upon itself. So the opening match was Shota Umino, Ryusuke Taguchi, and Dragon Dia, depending on who's saying it. Dragon Dia versus Tiger Mask, Yuji Nagata, and Tomoaki Honma. So we had a very babyface centric match right here. All six of these guys are good guys, but I think the main point here, Jeremy, was Dragon Dia and Taguchi sound like a junior tag league tag team coming up. That tournament is starting up next month. We're going to be seeing some junior heavyweight tag teams be established as they get ready for that round robin tournament. I think Dia and Taguchi are going to be one. I'm happy about seeing Dragon Dia back. I think this guy's very talented. He's won a title in Dragon Gate since we last saw him. But this match itself, basic stuff overall. Death Rider finish, Shota Umino getting the win and kissing hands and shaking babies, or shaking hands and kissing babies. But there are a couple of items for that. Taguchi and Dia are going to be a tag team, and it looks like Callum Newman and Shota Umino are heading for a singles match. And those are the two things we took out of this, because throughout that Hokkaido tour that just wrapped up, Newman and Umino were locking horns, and apparently in post-match comments, Callum Newman confronted Shota Umino. They're going to have a singles match somewhere along the line, possibly at King of Pro Wrestling, maybe before that. And so those were the two main plot points from this match. I think Nagata, Tiger Mask, and Honma were there for everybody to look at them, but it looks like the team of Dia and Taguchi and Umino were most of the storyline here. Is that Umino has a singles match, and we may see those other two at Junior Tag League.
So, agree with everything you said. I'm looking forward to Dragon Dia and Taguchi. Taguchi as a guy is helping Dragon Dia develop is probably the best use for him right now. Two things that I noticed in here, and I don't know if you caught anything like this as well. Yuji Nagata made comments about this being the last time he'll probably be performing at this arena, and kind of hinted that he's winding down in general, maybe after his Blue Justice show in October. Yeah. That might be the last Blue Justice show, and there might not. He said he's getting at an age where, we shouldn't be performing anymore. And as much as he loves it, it's just getting to be that time. And it seemed a little whimsical and retrospective in a way where it didn't seem English in a lot of ways. So I just keep an eye on that. And Shota Umino, new look, haircut, vibe. Kind of felt like the way he came out was performative rather than like genuine with the babies and everything like that. And even after, when the match was over and they were doing the photos and everything, he was ready to get out of there and just kind of, I don't know. There was a vibe about it that makes me want to pay more attention to what's going on immediately with Shota Umino and exactly what role he's going to be playing in this Callum Newman feud. Because, I don't know, just something that you're just vibing. Did you get any of that?
I got less of it than you did. I believe I understand what you're talking about. I do think he's still trying to play the number one babyface type of role right there, even if it is a little bit forced right there. So maybe they'll do the turn. Maybe they might. They very well might.
Something's not working, and part of me thinks that they're trying to make it seem like it's like he can't figure it out, but maybe they're doing it on purpose. And we're going to find out sooner rather than later. But my ears are perking up at this because it's just something weird about the whole thing is all I'm saying.
If anything does happen, I don't think it'll happen for a little while. I think we might get to World Tag League or something like that. But once we get into October, Junior Tag League takes the main stage. So I think that any heavyweight angles are probably going to wait until around November-ish or something before they really kick in for Wrestle Kingdom.
It could be 6 months before we see any full personality transformation and character shift for Shota Umino. They could do it in 6 months from now and be complete, or not do it at all. Like this is open landscape, but he's clearly a building block for the promotion. So they're going to be paying careful attention to him.
All right, so that was the opener, and then we were on to the next match, and this was it was LIJ against United Empire, and this was the aforementioned Callum Newman, who, like I mentioned, confronted Shota Umino in the back afterwards, but he was teaming with Jeff Cobb and Francesco Akira to face Yota Tsuji and Hiromu Takahashi and Bushi from the LIJ faction. And the key to this one was we saw a new finisher from Hiromu. It was a standing figure 4 / cloverleaf type of submission hold. He got a tap out from Francesco Akira on it. He attacked Akira's knee all the way, and it's a move that could come in handy against heavyweights. And we suspect that Hiromu Takahashi's next couple of major matches may be in the heavyweight division instead of the junior division. And it looks like we're headed back to Tsuji and Cobb. Now, Ren Narita's health is going to determine if they can do a three-way. It's looking good for that because Narita apparently stuck his nose. We'll see when they do the backstage comments. That goes up on the website a little later on today, early tomorrow morning. Apparently, Ren Narita stuck his nose in the Yota Tsuji Jeff Cobb thing. Of course, he also interfered in their TV title match earlier. So I think they're headed toward a three-way here. If Narita is healthy with Cobb and Tsuji, seemed to be the story they were telling there. But anytime Tsuji and Cobb link up, it's pretty exciting. This was fun to watch. But Hiromu Takahashi with a new finisher and a potential three-way for the TV title coming were the stories coming out of this match.
Did you get anything weird from Akira landing weird on his knee and then the finish being within like a minute or two after that?
I think it was storyline. I don't think he actually hurt himself. I think the whole idea was his knee was hurting and Hiromu locked on a knee type of submission in order to get him to tap out. Right. I felt like they were working that, not that he actually got hurt. I hope.
I thought so too. I was just when he locked on that standing cloverleaf and he was able to grab like the thigh and basically put no pressure on the knee but make it look like he was. I was like, man, I hope Akira's fine.
That's the best kind of submission, isn't it? The one that doesn't actually put any pressure on the joint, but looks
absolutely.
like it.
So if he was hurt and you were trying to sell an injury to a knee without actually doing any damage to it, I was like, okay, you are working us on a second level here. Thank you for that. I hope Akira's fine. He probably is, but him dominate. Yeah, I don't like the three-way for the title either. I was like, as soon as you said it, I'm like, oh, that just makes me cringe.
Well, we'll get to that. Well, I'm going to talk about that when you're done talking about this match because I have thoughts also.
It just he dominated Akira, and so the story that they're trying to tell that he's motivated after the Hinare loss, and he just mowed through the other junior and the junior heavyweight in the match was just an interesting development for me. And we got the Cobb and Tsuji face off that we thought we would, and that's clearly not over yet. So excited for that. Give us your thoughts on this three-way.
Well, and Brad mentioned that I don't know if I like a three-way for the TV title is what he said. The title feels like it should be a singles match title with the 15-minute time limit. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Where I think they might be going with this is they don't really want to beat either Cobb or Tsuji, and there's a couple of choices here. There's the obvious, which is the plot device that a three-way match gives you is the champion can lose the title without the champion getting beat. You can also do things where, you have a guy in there that can just take the fall. So they can go a couple of different directions. They can have Narita win the title or Tsuji win the title without Cobb getting beat. They can protect both Tsuji and Cobb and keep that idea going. If one of the guys beats Narita, they can still come back at each other and just say, hey, you never beat me. And when the real story is Cobb and Tsuji, so it might be type of a placeholder title match before Cobb and Tsuji lock up again, which is the one we really want to see again, right? Mm-hmm. And this is the match we want, is Cobb versus Tsuji. Narita can be the House of Torture threat to ruin everything, like we see in all the tournaments and stuff. Oh, now we have this idea that House of Torture is going to get in there and this guy we don't like is going to stick his nose in things and threaten to ruin it all. And maybe they could beat him. And then in the end, they said, well, you never pinned me, so we have to have another rematch. It almost feels like a plot device to keep Tsuji and Cobb going more than Narita being a real part of the TV title picture.
Do you think that they could do a thing where they do 2 TV title matches between King of Pro Wrestling, Royal Quest, and Fighting Spirit Unleashed?
Well, Yota Tsuji had his excursion, part of his excursion anyway, in England, so he could absolutely be part of Royal Quest without it looking awkward at all. I mean, it would be a homecoming thing for him. So sure, you could absolutely do something like that. You could have Narita get a sneaky victory, and then he could win it back from Narita. You could do the whole thing where they rid themselves of Narita by beating him, and then they just say, all right, now we have to square off in England for the title. They could do all that.
You could do Cobb and Narita at King of Pro Wrestling and then build the match immediately right after for Royal Quest with Yota Tsuji a week later. And I think that's probably the most logical thing, right? Because Narita had that challenge set back in August, got hurt, kind of disappeared. Now he's back, and he's like, "You're already in line. I'm waiting. Give me my shot." And then Yota Tsuji's like, "I'll be waiting for the winner."
More than in line, he waffled both of them with that push-up bar.
Yes.
And I think that was a moment that meant something, where he nailed both of them with the push-up bar, and then he confronted both of them apparently in the post-match. So feels three-way-ish for me right there, that they just want to get all these guys in the same place at the same time.
Who knows? I cringe at a three-way match with a 15-minute time limit. I don't know why. Like, it seems overly complicated with a very simple rule structure. You know, two guys, the match ends up on YouTube, 15 minutes to a draw. Okay, great. I just, there's something simple in the beauty of the TV title that I've come to appreciate over the near 2-year existence of it. So I don't want them to lose that little bit of magic that it has.
I do understand, but I think it might be just a way to keep Tsuji and Cobb going at each other without doing a clean finish in the first one. Just keep going.
I just don't like that they booked themselves into that corner.
What's the next match? We had Hirooki Goto and Gabe Kidd. I mean, the good news, by the way, out of all that is Narita looks like he's healthy enough to continue. That's another thing. We didn't know how bad his injury was.
This is our next 2 matches.
Yeah, really, it is. Yeah. So we have Hirooki Goto and Gabe Kidd. So non-title. This is not for the strong title. That's being defended in the United States. And Chris Charlton actually spoke those words out loud as they hyped up this match with Walker on commentary. So that was solidified a little bit more that is a U.S.-based title. And he made a point of saying it when he didn't have to. So keep that in mind. So the Kid assaulted Goto in the back, apparently, before they even came out. So Goto's music played, no Goto. Gabe Kidd came out. He grabs the cameraman and says, "Follow me." We come back to the back. He goes through the curtain, down the stairs, all that kind of stuff through the set. Goto's laying on the ground. And then the fight starts in the back, and they work their way out to the arena in front of the people. They fought all over the building, went to a double count out. And this thing barely started, and they didn't even really try to fight in the ring. So this was clearly an angle, not a match at that point. So at this point, it looks like it's all being thrown out. The referees say, "Oh, it's a double count out. These guys, we can't control them. We can't keep them in the ring." Gabe Kidd gets on the microphone, said, "All right, never mind that. I want to fight you again, Hirooki Goto, only this time, no disqualification. And I want it right here, right now." So they switch the match over to a no DQ. Of course, Hirooki Goto, the good guys, is willing to take on all challenges and all comers. He says, "Yes, of course." And so they went right into a no DQ match. And I thought this was interesting, Jeremy. No DQ match. And they did almost nothing that would get themselves disqualified until the very end of it. So they teased that someone was going to go through a table. No one ever did. Gabe Kidd grabbed the metal spike that they used to adjust the ropes and all that. And he tried to stab Goto. He tried to murder Goto is really what happened. But Goto got out of the way. He ends up stabbing the table in what's always an effective spot, where this metal spike goes right through the table where the good guy's head had just been. He got out of the way of that. And then Goto grabs the spike, threatens to use it. Kid is scared for his life. No, please, no. He's begging off. And Goto, of course, being the good guy, looks at the spike in his hand and says, "No, I can't do this. I'm just not that kind of person." He throws it out of the ring. He throws the table out of the ring, and then ended up winning. So in the end, they really didn't do anything that would get you disqualified. But let's see, what else did he do here? He hit the Shotenkai, which is my favorite move in all of pro wrestling. He got the GTR to win. Not a whole lot extreme right there, but again, Goto beat David Finlay in the G1 Climax tournament in Korakuen Hall. He gets the win over the Gatekeeper, and some of the English commentary was talking about that Finlay was sending Kidd to go get Goto, with the idea that Goto had beaten him in the G1 and maybe a threat to the global title that David Finlay holds. And so he was sending his henchmen to take out Goto before he could. Goto overcomes the henchmen. Now he's got to face the final boss. This would play into the YOSHI-HASHI David Finlay global title match, just like we said on Thursday.
I think it's pretty interesting that they managed to have the audience convinced that this was a hardcore match without it ever being a hardcore match.
They didn't do anything hardcore.
The mystique of Gabe Kidd and the babyfaceness of Hirooki Goto and them just running around the arena was enough to convince the fans and be compelled because of everything that they have done before. Both of these guys in their curated careers got the audience, like they already had the cachet.
Yeah.
Like the cachet was there and Gabe Kidd could just threaten something and people bought into it. That is exactly where he needs to be in this promotion. He doesn't need to be going hardcore and bloodying up every single guy that he comes across, but he is such a threat and he has done it with enough relevancy and efficiency in the past where just the very threat of it is enough to get the audience to pop. And that's where you want him to be at this point. And so I tip my hat to him. I tip my hat to Goto because, frankly speaking, the renaissance of Goto and YOSHI-HASHI in the 2020s has been one of the most delightful things for me as a New Japan fan while we're watching the come up of some of these guys. The renaissance of people who've previously written off Goto and YOSHI-HASHI and a couple of these other guys as washed and or unable to contribute are unfortunately being proven wrong because these guys are contributing at a very high level and wrestling matches that are delivering for their part that they need to on the card.
All right. So that would go on to be of consequence later on in the show, and we'll get to that when it comes up. So the next match was one that I was very much looking forward to. We were going to find out who the new member of TMDK was. Turned out to be very consequential indeed. So on one side was the crew of just 5 guys, which is Taichi, SANADA, and TAKA Michinoku. And they were going to be wrestling Zack Sabre Jr., Kosei Fujita, and a mystery partner. And this mystery partner turned out to be indeed the returning Ryohei Oiwa. So Ryohei Oiwa, the young lion, went off on excursion to Noah and has come back as member of TMDK. Now, he and Fujita were young lion classmates. They basically came up at the same time. And it occurred to me, Jeremy, when we were looking at this, that when Kosei Fujita was helping out Zack Sabre Jr. by being a decoy Zack. Do you remember these angles when House of Torture were assaulting Zack as he walked out of the aisle? He would put Fujita in a Zack Sabre Jr. outfit, basically, and they would attack Fujita. And then Zack would come out and kind of save Fujita and get it, so that they would basically a decoy. They would all have their attention toward this guy they thought was Zack, turned out to be a young lion. Hey, what the heck? This isn't Zack Sabre Jr. And then poof, Zack is behind them and ready to beat the hell out of him. A couple of times that was Oiwa that played that role. And they even played it up a little bit. Because you remember at Wrestle Kingdom was the day when TMDK, the tag team, Mikey Nichols, Shane Haste, and Zack Sabre Jr. grabbed Fujita, who was there as a ringside attendant like all the young lions were, and said, "We need a young lion. I'm picking this one. It's Kosei Fujita." And so Kosei Fujita is a new member of TMDK. And he was like, "Oh, hell yeah. All right, great." Young lions don't get recruited much, right? They even cut to Ryohei Oiwa looking around, just like, "Hey, I helped you out too. What the hell?" So as it turns out, he was a member of TMDK many years later. Zack did not forget. He just chose Fujita first. And Oiwa had a very successful run in Noah. He's back. He's bulked up, looks fantastic.
He's huge.
He's very big. He has a Dominic Mysterio-esque mullet that he will regret in a few years, but we'll get past that when we get to it. In the meantime, though, he was indeed the mystery partner. And what we saw here was a preview of Royal Quest, where Zack is going to wrestle SANADA in London. And we saw all the great pin scrambles that Zack and SANADA do better than any other two wrestlers, where they just kind of go in and out of pins and combinations. And they just managed to get themselves twisted up into all kinds of knots and pretzels. That was a lot of fun to watch. But in the end, this was simply Oiwa winning with a discus clothesline on Taka Michinoku, putting the new guy over. Oiwa, the new member of TMDK, he gets the victory here, looks strong, and he would have something to do later on in the show as well. We talked about this. We said that he was the most likely candidate for this spot because anything else is going to be a letdown. Chris Charlton said when he came out, it's the worst kept secret in all of Japan. So I think everybody had a feeling that it was Oiwa, but I understand we had talked for weeks about whether this was the best spot for him. Maybe he should run his own faction. Should he be a member of TM? Should he be Shingo to Naito, to Zack Sabre's Naito? If Zack Sabre is the leader of this group, should he be the number 2 guy? Time will tell on all of those things. And it looks like he's sticking his nose in some pretty big business right off the bat. I'm just happy to have Ryohei Oiwa back in the company.
I was banging my head against the wall. Like, how do you not want this guy to be the number 2 singles in like TMDK if they're going to make Zack Sabre Jr. the total final boss of New Japan Pro Wrestling moving forward? It's like, this is the spot for him. And, that's exactly the spot that they put him in. They set him up to face off against the number 2 of another faction, and we'll get to that point by the end of the show. And it was exactly what I said that they were going, like, that he should be positioned as one of the graduated young lions in this crop that is going to blow away a lot of people among this generation. It's like the last 2.5 years of premiering young lions into New Japan is pretty fantastic.
Absolutely.
It's like getting the best of NXT all in 2 years, all coming into the roster at the same time, and then them all going to WWE. Like, this is what we're talking about here. These guys are really, really good, and they're getting thrown in the mix, and they're getting thrown at the top level. I'm super happy that Oiwa is in TMDK. There was a point, like deep down, we all knew that this was the result, that this was this was the only option. Like hook or crook, this guy should have been in TMDK, and they didn't beat around the bush. They didn't do anything. They just put him in there, and here we go. And I am here for it.
Brad says, it makes me sad, Panda, anytime Zack Sabre Jr. and Taichi are on opposite sides of the ring. Dangerous techers for life, he says. So, yeah, that was a great tag team. That was Zack and Taichi were a terrific team. And I always enjoy seeing them in with each other.
They really didn't want to touch on that during this match. They focused on Taichi's smoldering looks and a bunch of other stuff, but I really didn't get a sense that they really wanted to revisit Dangerous Techers at all.
Taichi, man, that's a lot of sexy for one place. I'm telling you, that's difficult to handle. So that was
that
the
passion look. Smoldering.
Oh, my goodness, be still my beating heart. After that, we began the run of title matches that didn't let up until the end of the card. We had a never open weight 6-man tag team title match. That was Hiroshi Tanahashi, Oleg Boltin, and Toru Yano, the champions, taking on Sho, Evil, and Yujiro Takahashi. And they did me a bamboozle on this one there, Jeremy. I really thought that this was going to be House of Torture getting some heat up there, but this show was heavy on the happy endings, a lot like Hokkaido was when they went to Noboribetsu and just did happy endings all night. This one kind of felt a little bit like that. I thought this was going to be heat. Instead, what we had were the baby faces absolutely rolling for the first 10 minutes of the match and just making the House of Torture look like fools. But then the ref was knocked out. The bad guys began cheating. Ren Narita came out of nowhere with the push-up bar. First time we've seen him since he had that arm injury a few weeks back. And they were beating down the baby faces when El Phantasmo made an appearance and came running out with a new short haircut. And he had trimmed off the locks. He beat up House of Torture. He hit the CR2 on Yujiro Takahashi. Just as the ref was starting to get back into the ring, didn't see the interference, set him up for the high fly flow. Tanahashi hit the big splash on Yujiro and got the pinfall victory. It was a happy ending. And in the end, El Phantasmo and Jado offered a hand to Hiroshi Tanahashi. El Phantasmo said he wanted to come home, was what he said in English there in the middle of the ring. So another happy ending. And maybe, Jeremy, this is part of what Tanahashi mentioned in that press conference a while ago. He wanted to make Hantai the classic, babyface group, the ones that are there taking pictures and signing autographs and all that. Wanted to make them cool because they didn't seem cool. Even the other babyface teams were more aloof, didn't necessarily show up all the time, were a little more mysterious. He wanted Hantai to be a destination. And what they did here was take El Phantasmo, coming into the ring, running off the bad guys and saying, I choose Hantai. I want to come home to Hantai. So that's part of that storyline, isn't it? So in the end, the good guys win. House Torture's banished. On to bigger things. So happy ending for that group, and perhaps part of that Tanahashi-based storyline.
I think the Tanahashi and Evil House of Torture will continue. This
Yeah.
is just a chapter break. This was all a delivery system to convey the Ren Narita is back, and he's fine. And El Phantasmo has a glow up, and boy, does he have a glow up. Like, he looked like he gained about 15 pounds of muscle.
Yeah.
He's got the short, bleached blonde, almost Sting-like haircut, like a almost crop, flat top kind of thing. And let me ask you something, Steven. Who's the number one babyface in Hontai?
Tanahashi.
Is it Tanahashi or is it Shota Umino?
It's Tanahashi.
Okay. Where does Shota Umino stand in that pecking order?
Probably second. Although I tell you what, if Bolton Oleg keeps going, he might end up number 2 in that group.
Where's El Phantasmo going to end up in that hierarchy?
Well, that's an interesting question right there. Is that absolutely could be somebody who ends up number 2 in that group if they push him? Yes, absolutely. He certainly has the talent.
I think it is very interesting and very subtle that they both came out tonight looking like young babyface stars for Hontai, both with bleached blonde hair, both coming out with like the babyface energy, but one of them was leaning into it and the other one was kind of just there. I don't know. I thought it was really interesting just the way that they presented El Phantasmo, and where they are presenting to him seems to already have a spot taken. So where are they going with that? Because if Tanahashi is still President Tanahashi and the number one guy, and he's got his plans, is there room for 2 number 2s in Hontai?
A lot of storyline to go on that one. But for now, the 6-man tag team titles are staying with Hontai. And
I enjoyed all of this.
Yeah, no, it was fine. Yeah, I mean, the match was fine, really. I mean, there were fewer. They have indeed toned down a little bit of the House of Torture. They're still heels. They still cheat. The referee gets knocked out. They still do dastardly things behind there. But it's not we haven't seen the overbooked messes that we had in the first half of the year so far. It's been all right. What's next? We had the junior heavyweight tag team title, Doki, defending against Yoshinobu Kanemaru. So Kanemaru worked Doki's knee like he had set up in Nobori Betsu by attacking his knee during the Royal Rumble type of match they had there. So he telegraphed that, and he went through with it here. This is a lot of knee work here, trying to ground Doki. Kanemaru dominated everything early. And you can't, at first, you say, well, if you lose or you're getting your butt kicked for the first 10 minutes of the match, it means you're going to come back and win. But they go against that pattern more than they used to, Jeremy. That's become more of an American pattern. Certainly still works in WWE, by the way. But in New Japan, it's a little like for the never Openweight 6-man matches. The good guys, the Hontai crew dominated the first 10 minutes of that match and then just won in the end. So you couldn't take it for granted that Doki was going to come back and win this one, even though Kanemaru handled most of the offense. Sometimes the story is the dominant person wins. But Sho came out to distract during the comeback. That would matter later. Kanemaru got the whiskey bottle, poured the whiskey in his mouth, spit it in Doki's eyes, hit a moonsault for 2. There were some other close calls. But at about the 20-minute mark, Doki managed to hit the suplex de la Luna and get the victory. This was a very good match, but exactly what we thought it was, which was that Kanemaru was a really good wrestler who would have a really good match, but put over the champion and establish him as a strong title holder moving forward. After that match, Sho got on the microphone. Sho has been very comfortable on the microphone. He grabs it. He just comes off. He always has something to say about the hometown.
Right.
He's a good heel right there. He swiped the belt and said that he would challenge for it. And if Doki doesn't accept, I will smash the belt with a wrench, with the metal wrench that he always carries around. As it turns out, Doki agreed to defend against him. Of course, Doki takes on all comers. Sho gave him the belt back, but then nailed him in the head with the wrench. And just before he could do any more damage, Taichi came out with a chair and ran him off. So we transitioned from a title defense over Kanemaru to a title match coming up against Sho. And that's two really good matches for Doki in a row, because Sho, when he wrestles really well. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with that one. And that'll probably be coming up at King of Pro Wrestling, I'd imagine.
Yeah, they're setting up opponents for Doki to line him up and knock him down like dominoes. Sho, I do not see him winning the title after, winning the title last time via count out. I don't see them approaching that kind of storytelling plateau when it comes to Doki, especially with the care and thought that they put in to this Kanemaru match. So they made it clear and reminded all of us that it was a year ago at Destruction Kobe that Kanemaru betrayed just 5 guys, including Doki, and joined House of Torture. So this was a year anniversary to that betrayal. And then during the match, one of the storyline points that they wanted to drive home is that Kanemaru felt like he has taught Doki a lot, but not everything that he knows, and that's his confidence. But that Charlton reminded us, Doki hasn't shown Kanemaru everything that he knows. So this was the story of like, his arsenal is better than Kanemaru's arsenal, and he was going to beat him on pure skill and ability at their points in their career. And you mentioned that Hirooki Goto Shotenkai is your favorite move, and I will remind you every time that I absolutely love the elevated German suplex called the Suplex de la Luna pinning maneuver. It is beautiful.
Yeah, he really does it well with that bridge and things. So that it was a good match. It was a good match he could win, which is exactly what Kanemaru always gives you as a heel. You can always have him lose to a good guy, and he's going to give you a good match and make the good guy look like $1 million. So he provides a very valuable service in this role as a heel.
The heel master always delivers.
After this was the never openweight title, Henare against Shingo Takagi. Another really good match between these two. It's hard hitting. It was stiff. I encourage everyone to go back and watch this one.
Too many headbutts.
Yeah, a few too many. They tend to do that a little more. I'd like to see fewer headbutts in pro wrestling altogether. Shoot ones. I mean, you can work them all you want. I don't mind that a bit, but this one was a little bit rough on the noggin. But Shingo didn't quite hit last to the dragon right at the end. The weight distribution was a little bit off, so that looked a little bit dangerous. Once again, just a terrific match between two terrific wrestlers who hit very hard, mostly very safely, the headbutts being a notable exception right there. But these two I can watch go at it over and over again. And this time they put the belt back on Shingo Takagi. A bit of a surprise until we saw the main event, and then we had an idea of what was going on with that and what they had in mind for it. I still feel it might be a little bit early to take that thing off at Henare, but maybe that's just me being a mark for Henare and being a fan of his. But they put that one back on Shingo, and it's fine. I mean, Shingo's fantastic. They've got big plans for it. It's okay. And in the end, terrific match. Never openweight champion. Once again, Shingo Takagi, who I think has held it more than anybody else as far as number of title wins going. I think he's won the never title more than anyone now.
These two always deliver with each other. They beat the absolute shit out of each other. There's no other way to put it other than like, I was amazed that either one of these guys walked out of the ring and or walked back out later on for any reason whatsoever, given the absolute brutality that they seem to put through each other time and time again. I mentioned the headbutts. I don't love them. I've accepted them in New Japan that they are going to do them, and I have no control or power over them, and I wish that they wouldn't, but here we are. Henare doesn't get the flowers that he deserves. I wish he didn't lose this title when he did, but at the same time, it is becoming obviously apparent to me that they're positioning all their top stars to have the top titles going into Wrestle Kingdom and or challenging for them. And if you're looking at Henare and you're looking at Shingo and you're looking at the bigger star, it's Shingo. And there's no real argument to be made for that. So if he's going to be the standard bearer of holding the never title going to Wrestle Kingdom, so be it.
We talked about how Kobe World Hall is basically Dragon Gate's sumo hall, and Chris Charlton even mentioned that in the show. Like that building for Dragon Gate is their building. That's where they have their biggest shows. There in Kobe, and of course Shingo Takagi was the biggest star in Dragon Gate for a very long time before he joined New Japan. So there was a little bit of symmetry there for the people in Kobe. And yeah, Brad mentioned these guys are always at the top of their game against each other. Would have liked a longer reign from Hinare.
Right.
I thought so too. But we started to see a little bit of what they had in mind. Dunstan mentions that too. He said, I can't lie, very good match. Dunstan had expressed some reservations about seeing this as a rematch. He said, but it felt like we were going backwards until the announcement later. And yeah, this was part of an angle that would show itself at the end of the main event. And Dunstan says, I may be the only one feeling this way. It feels like Wrestle Kingdom 19 will be an unpredictable show when you don't know a single match has been announced like in previous years. Yeah, it's wide open. Like we were really not totally sure what we have a couple of thoughts as to what they could do at Wrestle Kingdom, but they have effectively put enough pieces in play that you can't be totally sure about any of it. And it's doing exactly what they want us to do, which is, well, we have to watch King of Pro Wrestling now, and then we have to watch Royal Quest, and we should probably pay attention to what's happening in Lowell. So they've been effective in getting us hooked on, all right, we instead of just going from G1, like, well, I'm good to Wrestle Kingdom now, let me know what the card is, to well, I got to watch all these things now to figure out how it's going.
So I see the repetition going backwards because we have essentially put ourselves back into a position where we were in May, where it was Shingo as a gatekeeper with that never title facing Yuya Uemura, who hadn't quite broken out yet. And then he dropped the title to Hinare afterwards in one of those matches. Here we are, a couple months later, and we are back to Shingo, and now he is gatekeeping another young lion graduated into the next level with Ryohei Oiwa, and I see the symmetry there. And I think in order to break that chain, Oiwa kind of needs to win the never title, but I don't think that's going to happen. So, the repetition is there, and I validate that because I see exactly what he's talking about.
The next match was for the global heavyweight title, and that was David Finlay and YOSHI-HASHI. So Goto was at ringside with his tag team partner YOSHI-HASHI, and we mentioned last Thursday that the winner of the Goto Kid match might tip us off as to who was winning this one, so we could have a challenge coming right out of it. Goto was there at ringside, having won over Gabe Kidd, and Finlay played up the whole serial choker angle on YOSHI-HASHI. It's like, you always get to these spots, you always lose. He really hit that hard leading up to this one. And they also leaned into YOSHI-HASHI trying to make a save on Kobe World Hall and falling down as he ran down the aisle and crashing into the ring instead of sliding into the ring like a hero, which happened years and years ago. The Titus O'Neil thing, right, in Saudi Arabia, where YOSHI-HASHI is sprinting down to the ring, loses his footing just as he gets there and bites it in front of the entire arena. But it didn't happen today. And Finlay tried to throw him around in the aisle, and this time YOSHI-HASHI sent Finlay crashing into the apron for a little bit of justice there. At the end, Goto tried to interfere, but Goto helped keep him at bay. That Goto kept Gato from interfering, and YOSHI-HASHI kept Finlay from using the shillelagh because by then the referee was so distracted with what was going on with Goto and Geto that he didn't see that there was a weapon in the ring, but YOSHI-HASHI turned that around on him. They also have a thing going right now where Finlay's resilience is off the charts and he can kick out of anything. So they took advantage of that with having him get out of a couple of YOSHI-HASHI's finishers. They tease a lot of pinfalls that way with him, where it looks like Finlay's beaten, but he gets that shoulder up at the last instant. And the heel that can't quite be killed. We actually got the senton off the top rope from YOSHI-HASHI. Haven't seen that one. He pulled that one out of the mothballs. And then later on, Finlay turned the Karma move into a stunner, which looked really cool. That was an interesting maneuver there, where he managed to turn Karma into an offensive weapon for him. YOSHI-HASHI kicked out of Oblivion. Don't see that too often. They protect that move pretty well. But in the end, Finlay hit a buckle bomb. They battled back and forth for a while, but Finlay hits a power bomb for 2, pop-up power bomb, overkill for the win, and excellent match. Really great performance from YOSHI-HASHI. I don't think this will hurt YOSHI-HASHI at all to lose to Finlay in this situation. And it launches us toward Goto versus Finlay after that upset in the G1 climax at Korakuen Hall. Finlay has unfinished business with Goto. Goto just beat his gatekeeper. It all sets up nicely for King of Pro Wrestling that Goto, the big, sentimental good guy from the G1 climax, is facing the biggest jerk in the whole tournament, and the global heavyweight champion, the King of Pro Wrestling. So I thought this was good storytelling, and I'm anxious to see what Goto and Finlay do again, because their match in Korakuen was terrific.
This match fucking ruled. This match completely over-delivered, and I had pretty high expectations. And I told you that I felt like there was something in the air with YOSHI-HASHI, right? And there was something in the air with YOSHI-HASHI tonight. Like, I believed throughout this entire match, even when all like predictive logic told me that he wasn't going to win this match, there were moments that I was like, holy shit, did you just see that? There were moves in this thing that I was just like, wow, these guys are really going hard. And, I had a moment of mortality and age when they said that YOSHI-HASHI trip and fall was 6 years ago. And I was like, no, it wasn't. Can't be. That's not. No. And then it was. And I was just like, son of a bitch. That was 6 years ago. Yeah. And, you're watching all this stuff and you're seeing the progressions, and totally fine with the fact that Finlay won this match. Totally fine that YOSHI-HASHI lost. This match was great. I'd recommend this to anybody who says that YOSHI-HASHI is a geek, because YOSHI-HASHI is most certainly not a geek. And
he hasn't been for years. Hasn't been for years.
No, but there is a stink that people like to have about him based off of, what they see on social media rather than what the truth is. YOSHI-HASHI is great. And this is one of the best matches he's ever had in his career. But it's not like his pedigree of matches is so far from this that up to this point he hasn't been able to, be consistent at a top level. He's great. This match was great. David Finlay is great. David Finlay being built to be the top monster in Bullet Club is working out. I think he is getting the cachet that he needs as well to move forward. I think the Goto match and him is going to be fantastic. I do think that by the time World Tag League is here, that YOSHI-HASHI and Goto will probably have all their business concluded and be tag teaming in the World Tag League like nothing has ever happened. And that's totally fine, because right now I'm enjoying these matches and I'm enjoying the presence of Goto and YOSHI-HASHI in the upper mid card main event.
Some comments on this one here. Brad mentions that us YOSHI-HASHI heads who have been on the bandwagon a long time are now being vindicated for sticking by him all this time.
Vindication!
I feel like he really hit his stride with the Bishamon tag team. Like when he really hooked up with Goto and they became a consistent team, it really helped him blossom to be next to Goto, because before that, I did think YOSHI-HASHI had a charisma issue, which is gone now. I don't think that's a problem with him anymore. And I'm not saying he's the most electric human being on the planet, but I don't see that wide-eyed, kind of nervous look anymore out of him. He looks more confident. He's much smoother. I think Bishamon being in that tag team became a big deal for him. And War Hero is mentioning, when is Chaos going to get a leader? Your guess is as good as mine. Like, what is Chaos anymore? There's like three guys. It's Bishamon and Ishii are the only real members of Chaos, and even Ishii's teaming up with Tanahashi now and palling around with him. Dunstan mentions the tag team titles have been MIA for months. Yeah, the TMDK has them, and they aren't in it all that much. I'd imagine we're going to see that emphasized a little bit more because the tag team tournaments are coming. And Brad mentions, I wouldn't be surprised to see more multi-man matches at Wrestle Kingdom this year with Dynasty the next night. Because remember, it's a 2-night event there in Tokyo this year. Almost treating Wrestle Kingdom as a preview show with a couple of bigger matches in the main event and semifinal. I think there will be things on Wrestle Kingdom that lead to Wrestle Dynasty, no question about it. And I think we'll probably see those setups for Wrestle Dynasty happen in the first half of the Wrestle Kingdom card before we really get down to business, so to speak, at Wrestle Kingdom in the second half.
So what do you think? 10 matches all title matches minus the never and a couple of special singles matches for
something like
Wrestle
that.
Kingdom.
But I also think there are going to be some things like I'm still predicting that if the logistics of it all can be worked out, that we'll see Finlay against Jay White.
I think Finlay and Jay White. I think MJF and Sabre Jr. is something that we see. I think Hiromu and Naito is something that, like, it just seems inevitable at this point that that's happening probably at Wrestle Kingdom, and then Naito and Hiromu will probably fuck off or Wrestle Dynasty all together.
And the other part of that too is we don't know what this whole Kenny Omega thing with Tanahashi means. Does that put the evil thing on hold? Is it something where he does something with evil about the presidency at Wrestle Kingdom and then wins and moves on to either face or perhaps team up with Kenny Omega? Considering Kenny's been gone most of the year, it might not be a bad idea for that to be a tag team match, just to kind of, to ease him into things. We don't know what that is. So, I think
Kenny and Tanahashi versus Jack Perry and Evil.
Yeah. I mean, like something along those lines, right? And
that actually makes a ton of sense.
Just having Kenny Omega on the Dynasty card would be a big deal. Just to have him back a little bit, just to have him back and healthy, just to have him back in New Japan. They don't have to do the big match with Kenny there. You can do that down the road. It'll be an event just to have him there. So, and War Heroes asking, when is TJP winning the junior title? I'm not convinced he is at all there. But and Dunstan says the biggest thing I'm wondering is what match with Finlay as champion will be explosive enough to draw a big crowd for the Dome, not involving AEW guys. And
I'll tell you what, here's my theory right now.
Go ahead.
I think it's Jay White and David Finlay for the global title at Wrestle Kingdom, and then it's a Bullet Club versus Bang Bang Gang match at Wrestle Dynasty.
We'll have to see how that turns out.
Because they'll probably want to do, like the Bullet Club and like a big 5-on-5 or a 4-on-4 kind of thing. Doing that at and then doing the title match. Because having Jay White back at Wrestle Kingdom, it's not Kenny and it's not Okada, and it is somebody with a lot of cachet with New Japan, and I think he's one of those right guys to be there as a global champion challenger. It all makes sense if you wanted to do that.
War Hero is putting up Yo for the leader of Chaos at this point, which might be the case. He said he's the leader for not taking the Prince Devitt route and just backstabbing everybody. Maybe that's the case. So it's an intriguing thought, but I agree with Brad on that. There will be things at Kingdom that set up things at Dynasty. I just don't see I don't see any other way around that. I think they're absolutely going to do some things like that. So it's a fair point. But I think the top matches at Kingdom will be in and of themselves and in and of their own importance. So let's take a look at the World Heavyweight title match, which was our main event in Kobe. This was Tetsuya Naito and Great-O-Khan. And there was a lot of submission work in this one. Great-O-Khan did a lot of stuff on the mat with Naito, which might have been smart. O-Khan worked the knees a lot. Naito did not have to run a lot and didn't run a lot in this match. A lot of it was done on the ground there. Might be a smart way to use Tetsuya Naito right now. He had a lot of ways to get in and out of leg locks and knee bars. And Naito did hit a decent Destino in this one. He did hit a pretty decent looking Destino. The second one was countered. There were a lot of counters of Destinos. He kept trying to hit his finisher, and O-Khan did a good job of finding ways to catch him and counter him. He also went for an eliminator. So that's the choke slam, except it's not a choke. He's using the claw hold right there. And it was countered into a Destino. He eventually hit the full Destino and got the victory after many, many attempts that were stifled. So I thought it was a good match. Not fantastic, but I think it sets up the KOPW show at Sumo Hall properly. So Naito gets the victory over Great-O-Khan. Zack came out afterwards, and they had the showdown. Zack's carrying the G1 trophy. Hey, I won this tournament, and I'm challenging on my terms. Shingo Takagi came out with his never openweight title and said that he wanted to challenge also. And it sounded like that he was going to say, hey, whoever wins the King of Pro Wrestling, I have next. But he didn't get a chance because Ryohei Oiwa came out. He gets next to his new stablemate, Zack Sabre Jr., and they're both members of TMDK, gets in front of Shingo and says, I want to face you for that never Openweight title. You got to get through me first. So what we had is the 2 number 1 guys in each faction facing off at King of Pro Wrestling. We know that. And then the new number 2 guys for each of the factions, Shingo Takagi for LIJ, Ryohei Oiwa for TMDK, are going to square off in what I'm assuming is the semifinal of that card at King of Pro Wrestling, or whatever, second or third from the top. And we'll see. Oiwa there. Naito says if he beats Zack, he will call his own shot for the dome. That was complicated as well, because as he says this in the ring, I will call my shot for the dome if I beat Zack, Shingo Takagi is standing next to him holding the never Openweight title. Hiromu Takahashi, who has been dying for a match with Naito for how long, is on Japanese commentary and sitting there looking up at him. Who will he pick? Naito's in a real pickle as he goes in. He's got a match with Zack Sabre Jr. He has 2 of his own faction mates breathing down his neck for a title shot. And he has this new hot shot from Noah, who might stick his nose in the whole thing. It's a very complicated life for our world champion, Jeremy. I love that they have so many variables in this. And Naito versus any of them, Zack versus any of them, sounds like a terrific match. I think this is very nicely done. I was very excited, and I am curious to see where it goes. They're doing everything right as far as piquing my interest for the Wrestle Kingdom main event.
The number 2 to the factions cock blocking each other was just absolute hilarity to me, in all honesty. Just Ryohei, man, why don't you and I do a little dance first before you decide to get involved in your boss's business kind of thing. That was pretty great. You know what? This match was exactly what I thought it was going to be, mostly keeping a ground match because Naito can't do much other than that. He wasn't moving fast. We are counting his main event career in the shelf life of minutes, not hours and days at this point. They both did fine. They got through this match. It wasn't as good as any of the 3 matches beforehand, but there was main event cachet, and Great Okan got a great reaction coming out. Naito got a great reaction. There was energy to it, but you knew that this match was going to be on the ground, quiet, slow, submission hold. There were going to be the high spots here and there, and near the very end, they did the corner spot where Naito, I think, did the Hurricane Rana on Great Okan and got him off of the top rope.
Yeah,
and they got the Destino at the end. So they maximized the moments when Naito did like a high spot, but it wasn't much. And thankfully, when he did, he stumbled to get to the top of the ropes. There were things like that. They were on the ropes a couple of times, teasing stuff without actually pulling it off. It happened a lot. But we're at that stage with Naito right now. And we got exactly the match that I thought we would. And I'm glad that it was fine for all intents and purposes. It really was. And then you described all the stuff that happened afterwards. They are laying the groundwork for a very exciting October with one show that we're going to be able to see live, and then another show that who knows when we're going to be able to see it.
We don't know. Yeah, you're right.
We do have a power struggle show in November as well, right?
Yeah, that's true. There's still that to come. There's more. So Colin asked, do you think Kota Ibushi could be persuaded to appear at Wrestle Kingdom? Nothing is impossible. And if CM Punk can work with Triple H again, then Kota Ibushi may be able to work back with New Japan. My question is, do you want him to? There's not a whole lot of Kota Ibushi left. And he hasn't looked good. He hasn't looked very athletic. It looks like his body's kind of broken down on him. So it's a big ask. It's a big ask because not too many departures have been more acrimonious than Kota Ibushi in New Japan. That was ugly and went ugly early and stayed that way. But crazier things have happened. And Dunstan mentions that post-match felt like something I haven't felt in a while. The double gold dash to an extent. Yes. We got 2 belts in there. They might all be running into each other. I think that's interesting. Dunstan says, how about Shibata instead of Ibushi? I'd love to see Katsuyori Shibata back in the New Japan ring. I would love that.
I don't think that's going to happen. And I will say this for
really, why don't you think Shibata is possible?
I don't think New Japan is ever going to trust having him in the ring. Like in one of their rings, I just don't think that they are willing to trust him, regardless of how well he's been wrestling and the clear indication for all intents and purposes, that he is fine from here on out as a result of everything that happened. Like, there are people that do not forget what happened with that and the danger that it put New Japan as a company as a result. As for Ibushi, here's what I have to say about that. I don't rule anything out. I don't think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I don't either. Yeah, I agree with you.
But if you have the right idea and you have the right opponent, I'm open to it.
Colin says, I think he's where he needs to be in DDT, where everything isn't as serious. And that's probably a smart move there. I agree there. Dunstan has an interesting point. So I think I asked this before, but shouldn't New Japan be a standalone show? I'm assuming he's saying Wrestle Kingdom should be a standalone show. The only thing that will be an issue is a lot of matches don't feel must-see to an extent with the current roster. Or do you feel like you're talking about Wrestle Dynasty? Here's what I think that 2-night event should be. I'm just going to say this straight out. I think the major matches at Wrestle Kingdom, maybe the top 3, so to speak, should be New Japan centric, only New Japan centric to set up the company going into 2025. The first half of the show, you can do things that set up things on night 2. For instance, like you mentioned, Jeremy, a pretty smart move. Have Tanahashi battling out somebody in a grudge match at Wrestle Kingdom that matters to New Japan. Second night, he's in a tag with Kenny against somebody else. You can do something early in the night with Finlay to set up he and Jay White and have he and Jay White be kind of a big match at Wrestle Dynasty, the big interpromotional match. I feel like the IWGP World Heavyweight title match should be an IWGP World Heavyweight title match at Wrestle Kingdom, and then the champion can have a match at Dynasty, but maybe not a title match, maybe a special singles match, maybe a tag or something like that. I feel like the first half of Kingdom can set up Dynasty. The second half of Kingdom should be focused on New Japan going into 2025. Wrestle Kingdom is always kind of a season finale, with New Year's Dash kind of being the season premiere, and to set up and reset some angles and get things moving in different directions. That's how I would like to see it booked. I would like to see some things at the beginning that maybe aren't as consequential on Kingdom set up big things as Dynasty, but in the end, we need to get the storylines for New Japan in focus, and Wrestle Kingdom should not be a setup to anything else. Just like WrestleMania shouldn't be a setup to anything else. It should be the means to an end. It should be the event. And you can do some things to set up Dynasty, but I want the second half of Kingdom to feel like Kingdom. Like, this is the big deal. Did I explain that with any? Yeah. Did I do okay there? Right.
Okay. Look, I don't disagree with any of that. Ideally, this is how I would blueprint all of this.
All right.
Wrestle Kingdom needs to be booked in such a way where that if somebody has New Japan World and it's absolutely zero interest in watching Wrestle Dynasty, that they can pop onto New Year's Dash or whatever New Beginning show happens in Sapporo or Nagoya or whatever at the end of January and February, and whatever happens at Wrestle Kingdom, whether they book into Wrestle Dynasty with a follow-up match, would be completely inconsequential to a New Japan fan who just wants to go on to the next thing. So if you have Kenny Omega show up at Wrestle Kingdom and then does a match at Wrestle Dynasty, it doesn't completely alter the framework of New Japan Pro Wrestling. But if you want to see him, you can see him in the AEW crossover show. Yeah. And then you go on to the next pay-per-view, and we're back to business with New Japan stuff. That's why I was saying if you did the global title with David Finlay and Jay White at Wrestle Kingdom, and then you moved on with the feud in January or February in some way, shape, or form, but you let the AEW Wrestle Dynasty show be a Bullet Club versus Bang Bang Gang, which doesn't mean anything, like it's a match with all those guys, but you got your meat and potatoes on the Wrestle Kingdom show. I think that's the kind of hop and a skip that you can serve both masters. But I think that should be the priority of making sure that New Japan, all of their stories are served without feeling like you have to go watch Wrestle Dynasty. It's a great add-on. It's a great treat, but it should not be required viewing for any New Japan fan.
Yeah, it should be the match you wouldn't normally see type of show, but not the one. And remember, CMLL is going to be involved. Stardom is going to be involved. There are a lot of masters to serve with that one. Wrestle Kingdom, I feel like the IWGP Junior Heavyweight title, the IWGP Heavyweight title, maybe the tag titles, certainly the Never Openweight title. Their big event should be at Kingdom. And if those champions then wrestle at Dynasty, it's not for the title. You can do a special match. You can do a match again with a matchup you don't normally see. But I think it would be a mistake if they said, okay, the Wrestle Kingdom match was nice, but now the champion's going to have the big match at Wrestle Dynasty. No, make the big match Kingdom for those belts and have that be the thing that matters to New Japan. And if you have something that's a curiosity, here's an odd match that you wouldn't normally see involving those champions. You know, here's Doki versus Soberano Jr. Here's Doki versus Mascara Dorada.
Here's Zack Sabre Jr. versus MJF. You know, a match you're never going to see in New Japan,
but not for the IWGP title. Like if you know, if he wins, then he gets it. You know, that type of thing. But the big match should be Kingdom for those titles, and then you can do some things on the undercard to set up. That's fine. Now, I have no issue with that. But you know, you can even have something where, you know, somebody wins a match early in the card, they get a 6-man tag team title match in the next night. Whatever. I mean, I'm just
how
spitballing.
Funny would it be? How funny would it be if they did a Rambo on Wrestle Kingdom and the winner got a title shot for the IWGP title the next night at Wrestle Dynasty, and it was like MJF or someone with the Rambo.
He always wins the battle royals, right, with the ring. All right. Well, that's just my thought.
I would like exist anymore, but yes.
I think the critical thing would be for Kingdom to be the big event. Always keep Kingdom as the big event. That's your show. That is your show.
It is AEW is going to make it a pay-per-view, and they are going to air it at a time in Japan that is convenient for stateside viewership. So, you know, they're not 100% guaranteed to get maximum attendance there, because of the time of the day that they're trying to coordinate, making sure that it airs at a reasonable time for people to watch it stateside. Because they're not gonna want to do. Let's look at the date here. Because, like you said, the Wrestle Kingdom is always on the 4th, so this is going to be on the 5th either way, and that makes it a Saturday and Sunday night.
It's at 1:00 in the afternoon in Japan, which I think in Texas that's something like midnight, or what is 14 hours or something like it. It's late.
It's gonna be late on a Saturday night,
late on the 4th, and then it's going to be afternoon of the 5th in Japan. That's how that's going to work. So Wrestle Kingdom will be on a Friday night, Saturday morning here, and then Wrestle Dynasty will be on a Saturday night into Sunday, into very early Sunday morning. Yes,
it's kind of like watching a UFC pay-per-view where, you know, the main event and the main card starts at 10 o'clock at night on the West Coast. That's going to be kind of what it is.
All right. Well, we'll be keeping an eye on that. So that is our review of Destruction in Kobe. Now, we'll be back on our regular time slot on Thursday, which is the same time we started this show at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. We'll talk about all the new events. The other thing, Hiromu Takahashi laid down a challenge to Mystico for King of Pro Wrestling. Yes, please. All day long. Yes, please. Sounds fantastic. I would love to see that match. I hope I don't imagine he would have said it had it not been set up already with CMLL. So that's good news. We'll talk about all the news that comes out of this show. We'll talk about what we hear in backstage comments, anything else that goes on. And we're going to preview the Blue Justice event, the Yuji Nagata show in Chiba that's coming up on October 6th. So that will be...
Oh, you also have more Tanahashi talk.
We'll have more Tanahashi talk. Yeah, we're going through his career about 2 years at a time or so, and we will continue that saga as well. If you haven't caught up with us, he just was challenged by Kazuchika Okada coming off of a big title win over Minoru Suzuki at Wrestle Kingdom, and this new guy back from Excursion who had been Okato in TNA, because TNA was doing TNA things back then and had no idea who he was or what he meant. And so he was back. And it's interesting too, because a story goes that Geto, they were talking about, oh, you're about to get Okada back from Excursion. He said, yeah. And they just said, you like the guy? He did okay, right? And he said, Geto, I don't remember who this was telling the story, but Geto looked at him and just kind of goes, he's going to be champion. And the guy's like, oh, wow, someday he's going to be champion. You really feel like he's going to be champion someday? And what he didn't know is that Geto had a much quicker plan involved for Okada than that, which you would never have gotten if you would have seen Okato in TNA. But Geto knew who Okada was and what he could be, even if TNA didn't. We're going to cover that when we
check out one of the old shows, everybody. You can hear the story that Steven tells about how Tanahashi almost got murdered by his girlfriend at the time, and we almost never got Tanahashi
Very true.
Japan at the level that we got. Great story. Check it out back in August 29th or so.
Dunstan said Geto had balls back then. Yes, he did.
Still does.
So yeah, he's all right. So with that in mind, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us here. We're glad to have seen you all, and we'll be back at our regular time slot. Don't forget about that. Don't forget the Dynamite show on Wednesday, just after Dynamite. Power Bombshells, of course, here every Sunday. So with that in mind, we appreciate everybody who has spent time with us here live on YouTube, everybody that is catching us a little bit later as a podcast. We're grateful for your time and that you choose to spend it with us. So for Jeremy Finestone, I'm Steven Conway. Thanks. This has been Speaking of Strong Style, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
Thanks again, everybody, for checking in.